a podcast to honor the gods.
This better come with a sacrifice.
Deus Ex Media.
Content and Capable acknowledges the Indigenous people on the land on which we record this podcast, the Turungurung people. We offer our respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome to Content and Capable, the podcast based in Victoria, where somehow the weather went from, it's kind of chilly in the morning and it's not really getting above like 23 degrees to, fuck, it's hot, and there's a storm every afternoon. Wait, are we in Queensland? I'm still not quite sure. I'm your host, Sam, who's been experiencing this weather, which happens to coincide with horse racing and shenanigans like that. And joining me today is Radio Mike. Hi, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Hey, man.
Nice to meet you.
We've done an episode of this podcast before.
Oh, wow.
But nice to meet you again, man. Great to speak to you. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. You've had a busy, almost 2 years, I reckon, since we've last spoken. Did you want to let the listeners know, I don't know, what crazy stuff you've been up to?
Was it that long ago that we first recorded this podcast? Well, it must have been because, I'll tell you how I know, because it was, I moved house like 5 times in the past 5 years. So it was 2 houses ago when I recorded the first episode with you, which means that it was 2 years ago. So yeah, that's crazy that so much time's passed. And I think you've moved to Victoria because you were in Queensland when I spoke to you last time.
Yeah, I now live in the evil state. I don't know what we're calling this.
Where do you live?
So Mansfield, right at the bottom of Mount Buller at the moment.
Nice.
I work at the local paper there, which is lovely. It's a small paper owned by a small company. So we, someone young in their career wanting to move on probably at some point and get something.
Fair enough.
More broad experience. It's, I don't know, such is the media industry itself, really. So we'll see. Yeah, no, it's been interesting. I moved down in January? Yeah, January. So it's almost been a year here, which is interesting.
Awesome, man. That's a big step. Have you felt like overwhelmed by it, or have you felt like good about it?
I don't know. It's been a weird one where like part of me is like completely overwhelmed. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? You know, picking myself up to move halfway across the country.
Yeah.
And then like weird things like culture shocks. Like culture shock, you know, we think of Australian culture as like pretty contiguous, but you know, things like AFL and horse racing being big things in Victoria, and like a little bit more like classy. And I'm come from Bogun, Queensland, where, you know, we play rugby and fight crocodiles for a living. So, you know, look, I think it's been definitely a learning curve, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I think people definitely underestimate how different like the major cities of Australia all are. Like Melbourne compared to Sydney, which is like an hour flight away, are really different cities in so many ways. Even like in Melbourne, everyone follows AFL. In Sydney, and NRL is much more popular. And like that's a crazy difference for 2 cities that are so close.
Yeah, and to think that like, yes, we might have sports that like nationally we're really proud of, but like you can't like pick everyone follows this one sport. It's, you know, a lot of people might follow it, but it's like, I don't know, my housemate's parents were from Victoria. They moved to Queensland, and they're still big AFL people, and you can tell they're from Victoria because they're big AFL people. It's like South Australians and their posh accents.
No, I like that. It's funny you say like I've had a really really big 2 years because I haven't felt like I've done anything super major in the last 2 years. The only thing I feel like was like a major thing I did, which is not work related at all, was I went on my first overseas holiday since 2018, which was awesome. But yeah, now I'm back in Melbourne.
I was about to say, how was the trip overseas?
It was good. I feel like it was a long time coming. Like, I had not been. First of all, it was the longest I have ever been away on a holiday. It was about 5 weeks. And then also it was like the first time, as I said, since 2018. And I just feel like post-COVID and like spiraling through this like career I've had in the media since I graduated from uni in 2016, which I guess until you stop and think about doesn't feel like that long ago. But now you're like, oh no, I started in this industry nearly 10 years ago. Like, well, not quite. Like 7 years ago, which is pretty crazy. And again, finally going on this holiday and just like getting away from it all and seeing some of the rest of the world.
For an industry that moves so fast, it feels like 10 years. Like it's only, it's interesting. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Space Between by
Michelle Andrews and Zara McDonald.
Yeah. I forget Michelle's last name every time. I feel sorry. It's like, sorry, Michelle. I don't mean to get your name wrong. But fascinating being someone in their early 20s, listening to them talk about pre-COVID and being an adult pre-COVID. And I was a person who became an adult proper, through COVID.
Interesting.
So it's like, oh, wait, I just don't have that, like, adult experience of, like, what the before times were like. And I've got an idea of it vaguely based on, experiences I had. But, I only graduated uni last year and I didn't turn 18 until the end of 2019, which happened to be where shit really hit the fan here in Australia. So,
It's weird because it's like, it feels almost cliched in a way. But, like, I do feel like those 2-ish years of COVID, particularly in Melbourne where we had, like, really long lockdowns, I do actually feel like it's something I missed. Like, I do feel younger than I do, and sometimes I have to stop and be like, when did I get to 28 and I'm about to be 29? Like, when did I get to that? Because it feels like very recently I was like 24, but suddenly like 4 years have passed since then, or 5 years have passed since then. And yeah, just so much time randomly flew by without me realizing it during COVID. Because during COVID, we were all just trying to, survive, I guess, and like stay sane locked up in our own houses and everything. And yeah, it feels weird to be turning 29 at the end of this year.
Oh, yeah. It's just a very weird realization that, like, time has passed. We sat still for so long and just had that time to kind of, and especially to reflect, but also to kind of go, well, my life is on pause. Let's pursue my passions, or let's invest in something that I wouldn't necessarily have time for. And that's the funny thing, is that like we all kept busy through COVID. So it wasn't like we stopped, but I don't think we all realized that everyone else kept busy until like about this. I reckon around about now we're all starting to realize that, I realized that this was the first Melbourne Cup where the fear of COVID wasn't like, obviously COVID restrictions had relaxed mostly by this time last year, but like the fear of COVID is pretty much well and truly gone. And so, obviously we're recording this on the week of Melbourne Cup, having, such a large event, and we have our races on the same day as Melbourne Cup here in Mansfield, having, horse races and standing out there. It's like, wow, this is actually like what a pre-COVID activity looks and feels like. Yeah.
And it really is like, there is a clear BC, as in before COVID, and then I guess AC after COVID, and it's like, and the during COVID section is just a blur. But like, yeah, you're right. Funnily enough, I actually got COVID while I was overseas, and I had never had it before. That was my first actual experience with COVID, which spoiled like about four days for me of my trip, but. Yeah, it definitely feels like we're on this other side, like where people have almost forgotten about it. Like it's definitely still out there, but yeah, we don't really fear it now. It's just another thing, which I guess is where we were working towards with the vaccines and everything.
Yeah, and it's nice to be at that point where, of course, like there's a concern, especially if you're immunocompromised or have any health issues. But like at the same time, it's like, you know, I stood in the middle of our town's main street last Friday, and I couldn't, like, you couldn't move anywhere without bumping into someone. It was that packed, and it was just like, you know, having a festival like that, or, you know, it being at events where, you know, you're not being you don't know whether you're going to be asked to wear a mask. You don't know, you know, how, you know, what if someone gets sick. It was fascinating, though. I was speaking to a couple of people who work in theatre, and obviously for them, one of them ran a solo show earlier this year, and we were reflecting on that. And it was an absolute terror for them. And she was like, if she gets COVID, you know, that's the whole run of shows cancelled, and you know, it's kind of terrifying. So I still think that, you know, there's still that concern hanging around, which is weird as well.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah, and I guess that's why when we got COVID on our trip, we weren't even really sure what to do, because we were like, well, we obviously, like, we have to get on this flight. Like, we were flying between countries. Like, we've booked it. We can't not get on it. We have nowhere else to stay. Like, we just have to kind of keep going, and that's what it is now compared to what it was. Where, like, there's no way you would leave the house if you had COVID. It's really changed a lot.
And it's fascinating what policies are still like COVID era. So I had a coworker who got COVID, not to talk about this for too much longer, but like, you know, I had a coworker who got COVID, and the policy was you stay home until you receive a negative test. And it's just like that funny thing of like, oh, wow, we still are, like, people are still treating this seriously, especially in media where we interact with so many people. Obviously we're doing this virtually, but like often face to face. It's like, oh yeah, you know, we still, you know, I still talk to, you know, a good 7 or 8 strangers a day. For sure. Working.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, you've kind of let your podcast kind of go nuts, you know, while, you know, crazy success there. It's been very fascinating to watch, at least from an outsider's perspective, how you've been dealing with, like, you know, managing the creative demands of, you know, podcasting.
That's such an interesting thing to say, and maybe you can relate to this, man, because, like, I guess when you're in it and you're doing it, you don't feel like you're making any traction. But then, and then I speak to someone like you, and you're saying your podcast is like, I don't know, what did you just say? Like, it's blown up or whatever, or it's going really well. Like, to me, it doesn't feel like that. And maybe that's just this reiterated feeling of, like, extreme self-doubt and, like, self-deprecation. As you talked about before we started rolling, you were saying, I've got to start with something self-deprecating. Like, I don't know why, but and this is maybe a problem, but I never feel like, I never feel like I'm at the success level I want to be. And it's interesting that from outside in, you think that it's like this big success, and that's awesome to hear. But I'm still like, oh, like, what do I have to keep doing to keep building this? But I will say, like, I've been working on that feeling, and I've been working on, like, how do I be realizing that you how do I phrase this? Instead of always being like, where do I need to be? Just remember that, like, you're here now, and, like, people do engage with your stuff, and people do like your stuff, and that's what you kind of wanted. That's why you started this in the first place. So just be okay with where you are now. There isn't like a peak of a mountain that you reach and then suddenly you've got the flag and you're like, that's it, I got to the top and now I'm finished. Like, you'll chase that forever. Eventually, I think you just have to go, okay, this is what it is. Like, however this goes from here is how it goes. But no, I appreciate those words, man.
No, yeah, I think it's really hard when, and it's fascinating because obviously I speak to quite a few podcast creators regularly, and it's fascinating watching different people's frames for success, because don't get me wrong, I've struggled with what you're struggling with as well, quite a lot. And I think this year especially being a year where I have poured a lot of energy into producing like these episodes. And it's not, obviously there's been some things well and truly out of my control. Let's be honest. Having the entire, film and television industry on strike for 100 days each for the writers and the actors, plus 140 for the writers, 118 as we're learning today for the actors. It's just like, that's obviously such a curveball in, the way that you are able to kind of go about and go, how can I do this in a way that I want to do? And then, but also watching people do really well and different people's paces for success. There's been a couple of podcasts that I've watched launch this year and they've, overtaken me, and it's great to watch them, and they obviously have a really engaging content. And obviously, and I look at it and go, should I be growing? And it's that very like, why aren't I growing at that rate? Or, why aren't I achieving that success? Why aren't I being invited to that event? Why aren't...
I feel that so much. And like, even like when you mentioned the Space Between book from Michelle and Zara, who just like, I got to say, like, have completely just blown it out of the park with what they've achieved. And it's so impressive and so incredible what, like, starting with the Shameless podcast. And I think, I don't know, either in that book or somewhere I read that they used to just put posters for the podcast on the back of the girls' toilets, right?
Yeah.
Just to advertise it, and to see what something like that's become. And they've got their podcast. They have various like spin-off podcasts that are equally as popular. They've got like a newsletter. They're a full-on modern media business that are working on so many projects, doing live shows, all of this stuff. And you see that and you're like, wow, like that's incredible. Like I want to be doing that. That's amazing. And I do think it's amazing. And I struggle a lot. I struggle a lot with jealousy. And I think I think we all get, it's that emotion of jealousy where you're like, oh, like, why am I not there? But then I'm like, well, there probably are people who look at me and are like thinking that about me, right?
Yeah.
And then, so I'm like, and that's where I think it's like this never ending cycle. And like there are your peers and other people are going to be in different places to you at different times. And, there's always going to be someone who has who just is either like just better than you, or is more mainstream marketable than you, or just like people just like them more. And I think always trying to shed some of my ego and trying to just be like, this is just what it is. Like, this is life. This is where I'm at. And but jealousy is something I've struggled a lot with over the years.
And I think it's really hard. Like, obviously, like, our influencer industry is so incredibly commercialized. And it's funny, though, because when I realized that all of the Spotify original podcasts, I think bar one, by all those influencers, they all launched, through COVID and bits and pieces, that they've all been cut. Like, all their podcasts are gone. And you're sitting there going, oh, wait, so none of them exist anymore. And it's all of those ones that we were, like, I felt a little bit like going, why the fuck does Spotify feel like they need to invest in them when they could, pick up some other, like, smaller creators who already know what they're doing and go, let's put you in a position where you can be, really successful. And we had this same conversation last week with the previous guest, and he and I were chatting about, how hard it is to not feel that way. But, like, at the same time, knowing that, like, the Australian influencer industry is so fickle because, they all got dropped basically at the same time, and going, oh, wait, I've got more solid ground that I'm standing on because I'm in control of the entire process, and there's not someone going, well, you've got to do this at this time, and, oh, wait, your whole thing's cancelled now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I noticed the same thing. I feel like we've been on really similar like thinking journeys over the last few years, because that was a really interesting thing for me. I completely agree. I saw lots of TikTok influencers and stuff get picked up for Spotify pods. And I think my reading of what happened there is that I think Spotify kind of picked up too much too soon. I'm not trying to read into the internal workings of the Spotify content team, but I think generally speaking, from what I can tell from my own experience and from working with lots of podcasts, it's hard to monetize a podcast. Like,
it's so hard.
Even big podcasts struggle to monetize sometimes. So I think the common misconception, and again, like, full respect to Spotify for trying, but I think the misconception is, okay, these people have a million followers or 500k followers on TikTok. Let's get them to make a podcast and let's leverage their social following to make that podcast a massive podcast. And it doesn't always translate like that. And I think just because you make good TikTok sketches, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a good broadcaster or even a practice broadcaster. And I think that sometimes shows. That being said, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a TikTok entertainer who makes like really funny sketches for people, which like lots of those people do.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
I think that, I think this is the fascinating part for you and I who have and are working in broadcast. And, you know, people like, and I watch the way that, you know, Michelle and Zara run their business, and you sit there and you go, it is a completely different mindset to the way that a massive company like Spotify runs their business, where they're looking for growth. We're looking for success, they're looking for growth. And so, you know, just because, you know, downloads are down this week, or we're in a plateau, or we've run out of creative energy, or, you know, we just need a break for 2 weeks, you know, for our own sanity, we can do that. We can afford to kind of go, like, of course, like, there, especially when you monetize something, there's a little bit of well, can we actually physically afford it? But, you know, we can afford to sit down and go, it's not worth putting out a shitty episode when we can put out a good episode in 2 weeks' time and sit on it for a little while and be in the right space to do it.
Yeah,
right.
right.
I think that's where the business model of Spotify fails, and especially fails in a broadcast sense. I look at the way that people discuss radio ratings, and look at, you know, everyone's critique of the ABC, and it's like, yes, of course, the ABC was in a bit of a trough at one point this year. I was like looking at them and go, but you can't judge it on that trough. You've got to judge it on the year as a whole. And obviously it didn't look very good for the ABC as a year and a whole. Hence why they've completely refocused their strategy as a company, organization. But like, you look at that and I go, you know, understanding from a broadcast sense, it's more about the long-term longevity rather than you know, short-term profit.
I think there's so many interesting points you just made. The first, no, it's just I'm trying to rewind and address all of them because that's all really interesting. The first point I will make is about radio ratings, because I have so many thoughts on the radio rating system. I don't know if it's updated yet, but until, like, it's definitely, for most of my time in the industry, I heard whispers that they were updating it, but I don't think it's happened. It's all just handwritten. The ratings are all handwritten surveys that they just door knock to random people in Australia and get them to fill in to the best of their memory. Like, the radio surveys to me are the dumb. It's amazing to me that an industry that big is using a survey system like that to do their ratings, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts on radio ratings. I also think that no one outside of radio seems to care about radio ratings, and every radio station, at least in Melbourne, has some kind of spin on, like, Melbourne's number one station, right? Because whenever you hear a radio station saying we're the Melbourne's number one, it might be pop music station or classic rock station. Like, it's like, that's not, any radio station can just say that and make it their brand. We're the number one station in Melbourne. It's like, it's all just marketing. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all like PR spin. That's just how the industry works. So, like, just that's my thoughts on that. The other thing you were saying is, like, you're talking about, like, setting space and boundaries with yourself. So, like, instead of, like, pushing yourself to put out an episode every week, it's just like, if you're at a point where you're like, I can't put an episode out this week, like, I'm just too busy, I'm burnt out, I can't do it, then don't. I completely agree. For me, I've really shifted to, because I've been doing my main podcast, 20th Century Boy. I've been doing it since 2019. I'm in my 5th year of doing it. And there's just such a big catalog of stuff online from my pod, right? There's just so many episodes there. And I think I know I've got a bunch of like really hardcore listeners who are there every week and listen and chat to me about it, right? And then I've got people that come in and out that sometimes listen, sometimes don't, who fall behind, who then binge and catch up and then stop listening for a while. And then there's people who like listen to one episode if it piques their interest and then they don't come back, right? And it's just like, for me, it's all up there. I stopped looking at the download numbers and I stopped caring about all that stuff and started caring more about just having a presence in general. But I completely agree with you. Like there's been lots of times throughout the 5 years where I have tried to do the one a week. And in fact, there hasn't been a single year in the 5 years I've done this pod where I haven't had to force myself to just miss like 3 weeks because I physically have burnt out and I can't do it anymore. Right. And for me, there's nothing, even though every year it catches me and I'm like, fuck, I'm here again. Right. I'm in this exact same situation again. This year was the first year where I was like, I'm just going to put aside 2 weeks in the middle of the year that I don't do podcasts and I just don't have to do them. And it really helped me feel like I wasn't burning out and I had the break that I needed. So yeah, I definitely think that's important because if you're not giving yourself the space that your brain is asking for, then it's just going to fuck you up long term.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I didn't ask if I could swear on this, but I have. So.
No, totally go ahead. But like, and this is the weird thing, is like, for me at least, I've experienced burnout in a variety of situations, and often it spills very quickly to everything I do.
It's amazing how quickly your mental health just immediately like plummets and you're like, fuck, here I am in this place again. And I felt it coming, but I ignored it because I've taught myself that I just have to keep going and going and going and I can't take a break. It's the rat race of this, particularly in content creation, I think, as well. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. I think it's a really important part to acknowledge that sometimes we just ignore what's going on. Like I definitely did that. Like, and for those who've been keenly aware of what's been going on, I took an extra 2-week break. I try to take a 2-week break in the middle of the year regularly, just so I can catch myself back up halfway through the year. And it's usually about the same time I go to the US. The last 2 years I've done it. But then I took an extra 2-week break at the end of October. Admittedly, personally, there was a lot going on. There's a lot that I just won't talk about publicly for the safety of my job at this point in time. But, you know, at the same time, there was a lot that, like, I was ignoring. I was ignoring the fact that, you know, what I was doing, because the approach to those 2 weeks in October, at one point, within a month, I'd been back to Queensland 3 weekends out of the month. So 2 weekends in a row and then a single weekend. And that happened to happen right around AFL Grand Final. And it was like traveling is hell on wheels just on a good day. And it was terrible. So I saw my family 3 times in 1 month. And then I had to come back and I wasn't enjoying work at that point in time. I really then also I was not sleeping well. It was that daylight savings shift in as well. And I'm not used to like having to shift my body into daylight savings mode. And it just like threw me around enough that the delicate balance I had was like, oh, no, nothing's working now.
Yeah. And how did you find that or what steps did you take, do you think, to try and manage it?
Look, it's a work in progress as we speak. You know, as I joked before, I may have had a small mental breakdown at lunchtime today. But, you know, it's one of those weird things where it's just like, I'm at a crossroads, I think, at the moment. I've got to make some tough decisions towards the end of the year on what I want to do and where I want to go. And to be honest, I don't want to make those decisions. I kind of want to go, someone else make the decision for me, tell me where I need to be.
Yeah.
Because this adult stuff is not working. Like, I just don't want to, I don't want to have to make a decision for myself again. And my housemate must be doing the same, because we keep turning around and going, oh, what do you want to eat for dinner? And I go, well, it's up to you. And she goes, oh, it's up to you. Like, stop asking each other what, who wants what for dinner, because neither of us want to make a decision. And it's like, you can tell that, like, we're tired, because it's just those stupid conversations you end up having. You go, oh shit, no one wants to exert any more executive energy right now.
Yeah, I find that a lot. When I'm in those situations where I feel like I'm about to burst in terms of my capacity to stretch, like, yeah, there's physiological responses to it as well. And it feels like I'm operating on, like, it feels like my brain is so foggy and I'm genuinely not well. And like I said, you can ignore it for as long as possible, but eventually it's just going to catch you. And then, yeah, I've had a few, points where I just realize that I feel so heavy and I feel so weighted by everything I've got to do, and I just realize I can't do it. And I think realizing as well in this, particularly in like a gig economy, which a lot of creatives are in, realizing that you can't do everything you want to do. Like, there's so many ideas I get for stuff that I'd love to do, and I'm like, okay, I can't do it. And I try to set time around to be like, maybe I'll make some headway on this project idea I had, or this thing I wanted to do, blah, blah, blah. But it just getting the minimum, in inverted commas, just getting like the basic things. Like, for example, for my podcast, there's all these ideas I have, but like sometimes it's just like, okay, what's the bare necessity to get out this week? Is just make an episode of my pod, right?
Yeah.
If you can't do anything else this week, that's fine. At least you got something out there. Maybe it's not the best podcast you've ever recorded, but like, okay, you got something out there. All these other ideas kind of have to wait, and that's because if I want to really put the time and effort that these other ideas deserve, then I have to stop then I have to like put the other thing on ice for a bit. And yeah, I think that's...
Do you ever feel guilty for not chasing those ideas you've had?
I don't know if I feel guilty if it's a personal project. The emotion I definitely notice with those is just like disappointment and just sadness. Not in myself, but just like, oh, like, damn, like I really want to do that, but I just can't right now. I don't have enough time. So it's more just disappointment and sadness that I don't get to work on something that I would really like to work on, and it might not even blow up or achieve anything, right? It's just like some side thing. I'll give you an example of something, but I think it's kind of lame, but I want to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I want to, just for my own fun and amusement, I want to record an EP of acoustic Blink-182 covers, because I love the band Blink-182. Just me and my guitar, right? I just don't have time. Like, I play them on guitar, but I don't have time to actually record them, like, record parts and stuff. And then I'm like, well, I guess that project just doesn't really progress any further than being a project in my mind. Guilt, I feel more if I'm running out of time to do work on someone else's thing that is that's like paid work. And that, I always put that before my own stuff if it's paid work, because I obviously have to earn money to live. So
yes, yeah. Please pay my bills, please.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's funny because, like, obviously I've got a night. Journalism is weird. You either have these very incredibly cushy jobs, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You're not supposed to work any time outside of that. Or you're on like some random shift. You're working like 3 a.m. through to 8 a.m. writing scripts for, the breakfast news show or something silly. And I'm in the cushy stage where, I'm being paid well enough to be able to live fairly comfortably in a rural country town with plenty of events. The paper is it's sold quite well, and I only have to work 9 to 5. So theoretically, like, I could do whatever the fuck I want outside of, on the 5 to 9 on the, outside of, work hours.
Yeah.
But I sit there and I have been able to, like, there'd be things, if anyone follows the podcast on social media would have noticed there's more posts, there's more tags. I've had a bit more of a conscious effort to, have a better social media strategy, especially in the second half of this year, to try to see whether that's going to, improve results and bits and pieces. And I've just joined, and it happened while I was on my 2-week break, but I caved and I joined Threads, which has been an interesting experience.
Yeah, I joined it, but I stopped using it very quickly because I couldn't be bothered.
It's so different to Twitter, and I don't like the fact that you can't schedule yet. And obviously that's something, hopefully it gets rolled into the Meta Business Suite or something so you can schedule stuff.
Yeah.
But you just sit there and and that's the thing, is like, I just kind of want to invest in my social media presence a little bit more, so like I've got a stronger foothold when it comes to, showcasing myself to prospective guests. And it's a great thing, but like every time I miss something in my head I know I should be doing, like, oh wait, have I posted the meme for the week? Oh shit, no, I don't. Do I actually have any ideas? No, I'm drawing a blank. I've got work in 5 minutes. I should go to work. And it's like, oh gosh, another week where I've missed the mark again, and how shitty of me to kind of, and it feels like it's more of a disservice on me and my goals and aims than the podcast or itself. And I do feel that, like, I know I can't feel guilt because I obviously am alive and I have the privilege of making a podcast whenever the fuck I want, but
I think it's like, I'm kind of just doing some thinking while you're speaking, and I'm like, what is the, like, maybe even what I was saying before as well, you just sort of rang that to me when you said that, you beat yourself up for what you didn't do. But I wonder if for people like us, we need to like reframe it from what didn't I get done to what did I get done, right? Because maybe like, as I was saying, like, even just getting this episode out, this one we're doing right now, is an achievement for your pod, right? And me doing an episode, like the episode of my pod I recorded this week for 20th Century Boy, I actually didn't think was that strong. I didn't think any of my points that I was talking about were funny or like super interesting, and it was a shorter episode than normal, which to me says that I didn't have as much to say as I normally would, right? And I was like, well, that's what I'm putting out. Like, I'm not going to re-record it. I'm just getting something out. And I think it's like just celebrating those little things you get done that maybe you don't think of as like, hey, I actually am doing stuff. Like, that is doing stuff. And sometimes I just keep a list next to my computer where I just write down the stuff that I did that day work-wise, so I can just look at it and be like, okay, that's actually like a lot of stuff that I did. Like, so if at the end of the day you feel like, oh, I just didn't really accomplish that much, it's like, no, I actually did. And people like us, we don't have enough money that we can pay someone to work around the clock and post memes for us, right?
Yeah.
So I think like there are people who have money to employ like a social media strategist, right? So I don't think we can beat ourselves up for trying to do like 10 things at once. And that was another point I was thinking when we were talking about the Spotify podcast, is like, as much, this isn't like a diss at Spotify or any podcast production company, but I don't need a Spotify. I'm a fully self-sustaining podcaster. I can record. I've got my own studio, in inverted commas. Like, I've got a room with microphones in it. I've got a camera. I can edit video. I can edit audio. I can produce sweeps and stings and intros and outros. I can do all that myself. I can upload it and distribute it myself to all my channels. Like, the only thing I would benefit from, and probably the same as you because you're all self-sustaining as well, is like, I think something like Spotify could help with my publicity and marketing and like PR and people seeing my pod and knowing about it. But as far as production goes, I'm self-sustaining. And
that's the thing. It's like part of me always goes, oh, you know, someone else, I wish someone else could just edit my podcast. But then you sit there and you go, actually, I would hate it if someone else touched my podcast.
You reckon?
It's like,
is that like a control freak kind of thing or like an anxiety thing?
I think it's a control thing, but it's also like a creative direction thing. It's like, I know what my intentions were, and mentally in my head, I'm already planning like what I need to cut out. Like, and there are some episodes where I don't need to make any cuts, and all I need to do is sit there and listen to make sure someone's audio didn't like go off the deep end, or, you know, everyone all of a sudden sounds out of sync.
Yeah.
And obviously and I produce all of my stings at the start of the year. So, you know, that's what the, you know, first 2 weeks of February are for me. It's, you know, produce the stings, produce the trailer, record first 3 episodes and get that all sorted before I start my year back up on, you know, around the 14th of February. And it's like, you know, that's my job, those 2 weeks. And it works. The system worked quite well this year, and I will repeat it again. Yes. And so it's like, you know, and for me, it's like, I know exactly what needs to be done. And obviously I try not to touch the conversations too much unless, I don't know, I talk for an hour straight or something stupid. Or my Wi-Fi decides to disconnect itself, which it has done many occasions. Sorry for everyone who's had to deal with that. But, you know, sitting there going, you know, I know exactly where I need to edit, what I need to do. And I'm guessing that's what a producer would do in a traditional company. But you're sitting there going, I know what I want to sound like. I've done my research on my guest. I know what my guest probably wants to sound like. I'm trying to be as faithful as I can to that. Whereas if I gave the recordings to Spotify, who knows what the fuck they would do with it? Yeah,
I completely agree with that. Like, I'm scared to kind of, I guess, relinquish control of at least the edit of the pod. Like, because I know while I'm doing it, oh, I said something stupid there, I need to chop that, or like, I'm not going to use that, or like, this needs to change, right? I know all that stuff, and communicating that to someone else and trusting them to do it, like, that's a really big step with me. I think I'm really protective of my stuff, but I think, like, I mean, I wouldn't be like closed to it, but I completely agree with your kind of hesitancy to do it.
I think if I was to ever have someone edit for me, and I'm never going to say hi someone because I don't think I would ever have the money for it, but like, if I was ever to get someone to edit a podcast for me, it would be, you know, someone who had been listening, who probably sit in on a couple of recordings, probably had guested on the podcast before, and really understood what the podcast is about, but also like where my values sit, because. And I think this is the scary part. And like, obviously, like, anyone who owns any media organization feels this way as well. It's not the organization's, it is partially the organization's voice. It is partially like the brand's voice, but it's also my personal voice. It's my like physical voice. I'm not changing the way my voice sounds. And, you know, I'm authentically Samuel O'Brien, and, you know, I'm represented here. I'm represented on my bylines, you know, in a newspaper, and I'm represented, you know, in the internet as I portray myself, and I've got to control my brand. I don't have a manager. I don't have someone who books my interviews. It's me. Yeah. And so everything I do is a reflection on me. And so someone who understands that I care deeply about this topic, so we're going to focus on it, is really important.
That's such an interest. Like, I've never really thought about it, but yeah, well, I have thought about it. Like, the stuff that I put out is my voice to the people, because I guess, I don't know about you, but like, I never actually, let me rephrase this. When I do my pod, particularly 20th Century Boy, when I actually record it, I picture me saying what I'm saying to like a group of friends. Like, this is, and the sort of tag of my podcast has become the conversations you wish you were having about the stuff that no one else cares about, right? That's my tag. Yeah. And the idea is like, if I had a group of friends who gave a shit about the same shit that I care about, this is what I would be saying to them, right? And then I guess in my mind I'm picturing the listeners, but I never actually think about the people who are... I never think about how the people listening take it. Like, I never actually imagine being a listener listening to the show. And I think maybe because I'm so in that space of, like, I'm saying it to the people or whatever. Like,
yeah.
Do you feel that at all?
I think I have an inkling of where you're coming from as well. I think we've got to remember as well, you come from a radio background, if I'm 100% understanding of what's going on. And so I think part of that... You're wrong. No, I do. Yeah. So, like, the radio background, I think, is a very interesting one as compared to a journalism background as well. Like, for me, from day one of my degree, it was... be careful about your brand, be careful about where your byline is, make sure you're putting out the best work. It's really high stakes, everyone's really, really serious about this. Radio, you've got that room to kind of play with, and a lot of the time you feel like you're sitting in on a conversation.
Yeah.
You're sitting there going, perfect example is someone like Hamish and Andy, or even, Michelle and Zara, and you sit there and you go, you're the third person to a conversation. And of course, I think that where your podcast has its success, is that, and for me, it tickles that itch for me personally. But I hope that it's like, for me, it's like, this is the adult conversations that people, let's get down to brass tacks and let's have an adult conversation about, what's going on, or how we're feeling and life and stuff. And because I, live in a country town with very few people between the ages of 21 and 28, you don't get to have that conversation about, how you're going really, or, what's your life like now, or how did you get to your job, or what are you wanting to pursue beyond, your career. And so you don't get to have those conversations with people all the time. And so selfishly for me, I get to have these conversations once a week. But on the other hand, I'm hoping that, like, people go, so this is like a really cool insight, because I accidentally stumble on these conversations all the time. I get to, have a conversation with someone and go, I found out a really interesting thing about you. I want people to know about that stuff, really interesting stuff, and have a peek behind the curtain of people's really interesting lives. And there's no way, and I think that's where I come from in my head, is like, this is a peek behind the curtain of someone's life, and you get a bit of a closer understanding of, who they are. It's talking to the cool people, you wish you could meet at a dinner party.
Yeah. I wonder, like, what it is in people like us that makes us feel as though we need to, like, that makes us, like, so wanting to do that. And it's interesting you speak about, like, where you live being a factor, that, like, you don't get to have those, like, real conversations and stuff. Like, because you were doing it in Queensland. Like, do you think that there's a shift in, I don't know, how you feel it in that regard, like in terms of having those conversations?
I think I was having more of those conversations, but, like, at the same time, it depends. Like, they had to be in the right mood, and I think this is where, like, a podcast like this, it really sets the right setting. It's like, they were in the right mood, I'm in the right mood, we're able to sit down and have this conversation. Yeah. Whereas, who knows, when I was living in Queensland, I was living with my brothers by chance, but it's like, who knows what mood my brother is going to be in to have a conversation. It's like, I'm actually really keen for, like, a conversation about your life goals right now.
Yeah.
And also, like, meeting new people. I think post-COVID people are struggling with, like, how do I get around meeting new people and really engaging with new people when, we kind of embrace those social circles we already had and had become a little bit more insular because of it. And I think that it's going to have to be a serious conversation at some point where we realize we can't afford to be insular anymore. We've got to be open to new friendships and open to new social groups. And I'm seeing a little bit of it as my uni friends start drifting apart and having lives and graduating and stuff. But, like, it's going to be a fascinating thing, I think, when, you know, people in, you know, obviously you get that natural drift apart, but the people realizing that, you know, the groups that they had through COVID probably don't represent who they are nowadays.
It's funny you mentioned like that natural drift apart of like old friends and stuff, because I feel like for me, and like I think I'm like maybe like 5 or 6 years older than you.
Yeah, I think about 6 years older.
6 years older than you, yeah. So I've found like where I'm at like, you know, a lot of my friends are 29, 30, and one of the things I've found that's really affected me in the last few years is like just those natural drift offs of a lot of friendships, a lot of old friendships, you know, like high school friends, and maybe there's like tension there, or maybe there's like complicated feelings there. But I guess those people are always your friends, but sometimes I see old friends and old groups all hanging out and sharing photos together, and me being like, oh, I guess I would have been there in the past, but just because of where things have landed, I'm not there anymore. And I feel sad. Like I feel like I'm sad. I also get those jealous feelings again, and like dealing with that at this age has been one of the biggest challenges for me. Like it's been a real, just a real tough thing to deal with, is seeing your friends kind of continue without you, and realizing that I think a lot of life is accepting that things will be fine without you. And that's a really hard realization to make, is that like people will continue without you. You're not like as big a deal as you feel you are. And that's tough, I think.
Yeah. And like, I think personally for me as well, I was always, my parents hated me. Not that they didn't actually hate me, but they hated the fact that I wanted to listen to the adult conversations, and I wanted to listen to what the adults were talking about. And they would often be talking about their lives and their progression and how they were feeling, their careers, their families, and bits and pieces. And it was always a very naturally curious thing for me. And, you know, my parents would get mad. It's like, stop eavesdropping, Sam. And, you know, we go camping, and I would be the one who laid awake till midnight listening to my dad and his siblings discuss, you know, their lives around the campfire. But then also, you know, that like curiosity for human connection. You know, I didn't necessarily have a huge amount of friends in school, and uni was COVID, so that, you know, I really only had close friends right at the very end of it all. And so being able to do this is like, you know, if someone wants to, you know, feel like they're a part of an interesting conversation that they would probably have with a really close friend that, you know, they might not be able to, well, here it is, you know. And I think that we forget how much of a service continuing things like these are. Like, it's really important to, obviously you don't have to if you're not feeling it, but like really important to get, you know, understand that there's some people really like, and it's a really important part of people's lives to, you know, be sitting here and listening to a podcast where two people get to sit down and have a frank conversation.
And that's the other thing, I think, to bring it back to podcasting as well, is like, it's funny how these conversations often only happen on podcasts. Like, if it wasn't for this podcast, like, you and me probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right? And it's funny that for some reason, there's a market in podcasts for like conversations like this, when really, I guess in an ideal world, and this is no disrespect to your podcast, but I guess in an ideal world, we don't even need podcasts like this, because everyone's fine with having these conversations just in a natural setting. But like, yeah, like I never would have been having this conversation today if you didn't ask me to do this podcast. And I think that's just an interesting curiosity about us humans, is like, we're willing to be open and willing to like have like a conversation like this on record, but like, would we have had it in real life? I don't know. And that's it's I think it's a good thing about podcasting that it facilitates that kind of thing, though.
And it's also allowing you to passively listen to a conversation without having to be someone who's contributing to it as well.
That's true, actually.
I find yeah, I find it incredibly socially exhausting to be, after I record, I can't record more than 2 podcasts a day because I just can't sit here and be actively listening and interacting in a well thought out conversation that is coherent where, without losing all of my social and then physical energy to be able to do anything else. Like
100%.
And it's always a gamble as well. Like for me, I'm going out for dinner tonight. Like I've got to, I've got to go and have a conversation with a bunch of other adults.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, this is...
I'm already
this is the conversation.
socially exerted. Yeah. I get that too. Like, even podcasting for me, even though I love it, it's socially draining because you're speaking and you're having a conversation, whether you're doing a solo pod or an interview pod or a pod with a guest or whatever. Like, yeah, it's socially draining in a way because you're using up conversation you would otherwise be having with other people. And sometimes I find myself when I'm in real life, well, I guess that makes no sense because I'm always in real life, but you know what I mean, off podcast, off air, I'm almost recycling recycling things I've already said on the podcast because there's only just a finite amount of things going on in your life. So eventually you're going to double up.
Yeah. That's where I start forgetting who I've told what.
Yeah.
It's did you know that this was happening in my life? Or did you read this article?
And it's yeah, you told me that yesterday. I'm yeah, I did tell you.
My poor housemate cops the brunt of it. She and I will send each other articles back and forth, and then accidentally I'll send her, or that awkward moment where you and your friend accidentally send the exact same TikTok back and forth to each other, which is just hilarious.
Yeah.
Not socially awkward whatsoever. Oh wow, we have the exact same For You feed.
Hey, do you ever come up to or come down to Melbourne at all?
I do fairly regularly. It's only 2.5 hours away, which is lovely. But yeah, no, it's the last time I drove to Melbourne, flying home, I flew back to Melbourne and was driving up, and it was about midnight. I was about 10 minutes out from home, and I hit a kangaroo.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, it's because it's wow. This is the regularly scheduled Australian wildlife segment of the Content Capable podcast. Kangaroo breeding season's happening, and kangaroos are the dumbest animals when it comes to being on the road because they just hop
across the road.
Well, they don't just cross the road. Sometimes they're just bouncing along the road, and he's like, "Are you merging? Put an indicator on or something."
Well, I guess they don't know it's a road because they don't have roads.
But yeah, I came over this crest of this hill, and there's 2 kangaroos, and I braked, and I slowed down, so I haven't mechanically damaged my car whatsoever. It's just one of the lights is smashed up and stuff. But
because it's saying in the saying deer in the headlights. Yeah. In Australia, it's literally kangaroo in the headlights. Kangaroo roadkill is so common.
Oh, and it's rampant at this time of year, and it's terrible to watch. And part of me is and it's the same with wombats as well. When they get out, and because it must be a significant wombat area here, because when I go hiking and stuff, I see a lot of wombat holes hanging around. But you see them on the side of the road, and it's just it's terrible. My housemate had a galah fly out in front of her, and she almost hit it with her car. It's what are the animals doing? Trying to kill themselves? It
does certainly seem like that sometimes, particularly with kangaroos.
Yeah, but I'm absolutely reveling in our $10 capped public transport. It used to cost us $60 to catch the bus down to Melbourne. So thank you, the Victorian government, for lowering those prices.
Is it $10 return into Melbourne now?
If you do it on the same day, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah,
it's
really
lovely.
Good.
For 6 hours on a bus, yes, please.
Yeah, $10, not bad.
Yeah. But yeah, no. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the podcast and having a chat. It's been really lovely.
Well, that felt like it just flew by as well, which I guess is the beauty of those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at my watch and I was like, oh, fuck.
I know. I was looking at the time. I'm like, oh, it's been an hour since we started. But that's awesome, man. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Has there been anything that you've been reading or listening to that you wanted to plug?
Oh, I would love to plug the new Blink-182 album one more time. Now, if you... I feel like people your age didn't really grow up with Blink. So I guess maybe you guys... I assume a lot of your listeners are maybe like around your age, right? I guess maybe you don't know the story of Blink-182 or why they're such a significant band to millennials like me.
But I definitely think I listen to a lot of their music because my parents listen to a lot of their music, but I have no idea
that
why.
That makes me feel really old. That makes me feel so old.
Okay, my parents are really young.
How old are your parents?
They're like in the early 40s.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah. But honestly, because I love Blink-182 so much, I'm recommending their new album one more time. And if you want a really fun summer album, Enema of the State, their album from 1999. I've just been spinning a lot of Blink-182, so I'm spreading it to you guys. Go and listen to it. You will love it.
Awesome. And where can people find you on the internet?
At radio.mike on Instagram, radiomike.com.au. Like all my links are there. Radio Mike on YouTube to see a bunch of my content. Radio Mike on TikTok. Radio Mike everywhere. Just you'll find me. You find me. I don't have to tell you.
It's like Christina. She just doesn't plug her socials anymore. She's like, you know where to find me.
Yeah, you'll find me somewhere. Just Google me.
And then I go to tag her in an Instagram post, and I'm like, I forget the handle now.
Yeah. I mean, my handles aren't even consistent across all platforms, so...
It's annoying when someone takes like a one handle from one platform. You're like, can you just give it back, please?
Well, my Twitter is It's Radio Mike because some random guy has Radio Mike, so yeah. Anyway, it is what it is.
No, yeah, you can find me at sam.journalist on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm going to plug this week, and it's a depressing read. And please go and check the trigger warnings for this book before you read it. And it's called Educated by Tara Westover. It's talking about this girl who grew up in like a doomsday like cult family, but it wasn't necessarily a cult. It's just more like they were like massive preppers, which reminded me very much of parts of my family, and it was fascinating to like see how similar the thought process was between them two.
Is this a memoir or is it a?
It is a
fiction?
memoir.
Oh, it's a true story.
Memoir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, it didn't quite have the satisfying ending I was hoping for it to have.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating to watch that, like, as you obviously gain prominence in a community and are doing something really well and you start to get opportunities outside of your community and your worldview broadens, how you change as a person. It's very interesting. I thought it was very fascinating. And obviously as someone who, like, has gone through uni and has just moved and are watching my worldview shift, it's fascinating to see, you know, obviously like the parallels you kind of draw, but then of course like the like chokehold that your family, especially when you grow up, you know, hashtag Catholic guilt.
This sounds right up my alley as someone raised Catholic.
Yeah, and you just like, you go, you know, that chokehold your family has on you every time something bad happens, the guilt you feel if you're unable to, like, you know, drop everything and be there for them.
Yeah. Oh, interesting, man. I'm going to pick it up. It looks good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the podcast. And
oh, man.
We definitely have to catch up next year. Content and Capable was recorded, edited, and produced by Samuel O'Brien. You can follow the podcast at Content, the letter N, Capable on Instagram, and you can find it on Facebook. You can also send an email through to contentandcapablepod@gmail.com with any of your thoughts, queries, or concerns. The best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on your preferred podcatcher so more people can hear the podcast. The art was done by Opia, and the music was written, edited, and produced by Jason Hilton. Content and Capable is proud to be a part of the Deus Ex Media Network, where you can find a podcast for any of your nerdy interests.
Hey folks, Alex and I have been traveling, so there's no new episode today, but don't worry. There'll be one on Friday, I promise. I will make that happen for you. Our schedule's been pretty crazy, and we haven't really had time to sit down to record The Great Divide, but I prepared this little trailer for you guys, and I hope you all like it. So enjoy. Coffee, tea, honor, cabbage. Long ago, the four elements lived in harmony. Then, shit went totally cray when the Avatar attacked. Only the Cabbage Man, merchant of fine cruciferous vegetables, could stand against his trolling. But when the world needed some dank veg, he vanished. 10 years have passed, and my partner and I have started a new podcast.
My cabbages! An Avatar podcast.
A weekly show about Avatar The Last Airbender. Whether it's Sokka's new line of cologne.
Hey, look at you, sitting there on a seal. Well, now look back at me. I'm on an even bigger seal. Now look away.
D&D related antics.
You have to make an acrobatics check for that, and Aang just like unzips his pants and whips out his d20s. He's just like, I got this.
Or randomly breaking into song.
Go bending waterfall.
We'll stumble our way through the greatest show ever made, one episode at a time.
You can reach us at CabbageCast, which is our Twitter, or
subscribe wherever you catch pod.
Rotten cabbages? What kind of slum do you think this is?
Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. Don't forget to rate and review, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Deus Ex Media.